Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Rebel Finance School. And this is for the people who've ever felt they were behind with their finances. We also have a book giveaway tonight, so stay tuned for that later. It's very exciting. Thank you, Jackie. But let's start with many years ago, I read a self-development book and I learned all about goal setting. And when I learned about goal setting, I thought to myself, I need to set a big goal. And the first goal that came to mind was to make £100,000 in a year. That was my goal. So I set up my own business. I charged out into the world to make that money. And you know what it's like when you start a new project. You're full of excitement and enthusiasm. And then a few months later, reality set in. I'd hardly sold anything. And I started to wonder what I was doing with my life. And in that first year, I turned over £20,000, which is a long way short of the 100 grand I thought I was going to do. But I gathered my energy again in setting goals in the new year, and I set the goal again for the next year to make 100 grand. And I got excited. I went out there to build my business. And within 3 months, I'd hardly sold anything. And I felt dejected. I felt low. That year, I turned over £13,000 and made a loss. It was my worst year ever. I felt so behind. I felt like giving up. I felt like I was never going to get to my finance goals. And I remember taking the train to London, listening to old school self-development CDs. And I was listening to a guy called Brian Tracy. And Brian was telling me that once the money comes, you will be so shocked at how fast it comes. And I remember thinking, piss off, Brian. Like, I've been working 2 years at this. The money's not coming. I'm giving my heart. And I just felt like giving up. And I don't know if you've ever felt like you're behind, it's not working, you're not where you want to be. Well, this is the episode for you. And we are very excited to have with us two special guests from the podcast, Catching Up to Fly. So please, would you help me welcome Jackie Cummings-Koski and Bill Yount from Catching Up to Fly. Fly? Not fly fishing. I was doing so well until I messed up my words there, Bill.
You're doing great. I love it.
So welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, please tell us what is the podcast Catching Up to Fi?
Well, Jackie, I'll take that one initially. About a year and a half ago, I had a little idea that, I thought that I was alone as a late starter. I had buried my head in the sand, and I wanted to know that other people were out there that were like me, that were catching up. And I started a Facebook group, and I was like, I also want to do a podcast because I want to get the message out there and I want to help these folks. So that's the podcast origins. And that was only, less than a year and a half ago. And now we've seen 500,000 downloads. And, we have listeners from all over the world, much like yourself. And it's an exciting thing because people have said that we're changing their lives. And, our humble beginnings, I had no idea that was going to happen.
So you're not alone.
Yeah. I have a question, Bill. What is this FI thing? What does FI stand for? What is it?
Financial independence.
What does that mean?
That means you're free. That means you have bought your time back and you can focus on the things you want to do as opposed to the things you have to do.
Yeah, and I'll add that you don't have to depend on a job or money from a job to be able to survive and live your dreams and do what you really love. But most of us was taught our whole lives, you get the job to pay your bills and you work until you're 65. So we were very much dependent on, someone else or jobs in a lot of cases.
Yeah, we're taught that retirement is an age rather than a point that you can achieve and get to where you have enough money that you don't have to work again if you don't want to.
So the question for you both is, and maybe it's better to answer one at a time, but how and where did you find out about personal finance, financial independence? When was the awakening moment?
Oh gosh.
Jackie, you go first, Jackie.
Yeah, I'll go. That was a big moment. I am from the United States. I grew up very poor in the Southeast in a state called South Carolina. And I remember we lived down this long dirt road and I hated it. But I was raised by a single dad with 6 kids. And I think no matter where you're from, you'll realize that that's quite a feat. So my dad is one of my greatest heroes. I don't know how he did it, but he did. And it was obviously very hard. So all I knew mostly growing up was poverty and the things we couldn't have because we didn't have the money. So for instance, I had never gone to camp until, Camp 5. I'd never gone to camp growing up. Why? Because we didn't have the money. I didn't go to the theme park. Why? Because we didn't have the money. So just remember as I got older, I kept thinking about the fact that I did not want to be in poverty when I got older, because in my mind, not having the money meant not doing anything that I wanted to do. It was an obstacle. So to me, money is like that obstacle that's there to keep you from doing what you want to do. So once I remove that obstacle, wow, the whole world just opens up and it's all on me. So my dad passed away about a month or 2 before I graduated from high school. So I was really, really young. And so there was a lot that stuck with me, work ethic and things like that from my dad. And all these were formed in the younger years. So afterwards, after he passed away, I did decide to go to college, ended up getting married, having a daughter. And the whole time, this little nagging feeling about not being in poverty, stuck with me. And so I was married for about 12 years and I ended up getting a divorce. And that was the big pivotal moment for me, because what came to the forefront, am I going to be in poverty now that I'm a single mom? And what I thought was a shared journey is now just on me. So that made me decide, okay, I got to do something different. I got to figure this stuff out. I don't want my daughter to ever know poverty the way that I did. I didn't want to be in poverty. And then one financial thing that stuck with me during my divorce is that they look at your retirement accounts, because they basically put it in one pot and split it down the middle. Well, I'm in my 30s now. I had $20,000 in my retirement account through work, and he had $120,000. And I could not figure out what the disparity was. I since, went back, did some sleuthing and figured out, and it was just a series of little things, and with compound growth that gap kept growing. So that's when I started digging and trying to learn about personal finance and money and investing, so that I wouldn't have to worry so much about not having it and sitting there doing nothing. But it literally took me about 2 years to mentally get in a place where I was wanting to do something different. And for me, I'm a super nerd, you guys. I was just really, really interested in the stock market. And typically that's not the best place to start when you're figuring this stuff out. But I joined an investment club. There's an investment club or an organization that supports investment clubs in the US called Better Investing. So I was very curious. I had a friend at work that told me about it. And I ended up joining this investment club. We pooled money, invested in stocks and things like that. But honestly, the biggest thing I learned was to not be afraid of the stock market. And this was right around 2008, which was this global financial crisis. And that's when I started my heavy lifting. So that made a big difference. And then at that point, I was off to the races. And that's what turned things around for me. But I was 38 before I ever did my first net worth statement. I didn't even know what a net worth statement was. So that was sort of my awakening and figuring some of this stuff out. And then a few years later, then I discovered the FIRE community and financial independence and, started going towards actually making sense of, now I know how to invest. So how does that fit into my picture? Financial independence, or the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, helped me figure that out in very simple, easy terms, where I started to make sense of it for me.
Wow. So you've been on quite a journey, and it's interesting how those moments such as divorce and different things happening force you to change direction. Just before we go on to Bill's story of how he found out about it, there was a couple of comments I wanted to bring light to. Anne Lee says, I'm 71 and I've had things go south. So here I am. Tracy says, Yes, but what about us that are already in our 60s? That's too late for an early retirement for us. And Emma Kay says, I'm starting at 40, the same age as the Donegans retired. So there's a lot going on about the age and when we find out. I'd love to know your thoughts. Bill, Jackie, what do you think about those comments? And what do you say to people who are like just getting on top of their finances at 50, 60, 70, and all the different ages?
Oh, it's never too late, is our message, to get control of your finances and get the power to control your financial life. You're only going to get better. And it's important to wake up and not give up. As for my story, I didn't have the poverty story. I grew up as the son of a doctor, and so I didn't want for anything. And I'm an emergency physician, so I eventually went on to med school, and that was a problem. And many people may relate to this too, because the typical story of a doctor is lifestyle inflation. And that's what happened to me. I exited residency, and I had felt deprived, and I deserved the new car, the new house, all the things that I hadn't had, and watched my colleagues in their 20s and 30s, move forward with their financial lives. I exited med school and residency with $30,000 of credit card debt because I deserved all those vacations during residency. And, I got married, we had twins, and we got lost in the funnel of life. And I think this happens to late starters. We had kids, we had to raise our family, and we just succumbed to the typical American life, the consumer society. And I think that's true for a lot of late starters. And I like to say we're the silent majority. The average American or the average person is a late starter. You are not alone. And I woke up at 50. I'm like, nobody's going to take care of me. I got to take care of myself. And we had saved some, but we were single digit savers. What's the average savings rate in America? It's like 7%. We were single digit savers. And when we woke up, it was very scary. I felt like I was alone, like a lot of the late starters would feel, but I dug in, I educated myself. I like to say, pause, plan, and pivot. You can't just jump in and do it. You got to pause, take, where are you in your financial life? And it can be very hard to look at it, like I'm sure you'll talk about in the course. But then you plan for it, because you shouldn't just jump in and start investing. That's not necessarily the critical part. You have to get your mindset organized behind this. And so I'm not retired. I'm 58 now. We're 8 years in our journey. And I'm going to be working probably till I'm 63, maybe 65. But that's okay. We have the problem as physicians that we have the big numbers, but we have the bigger problems. More money doesn't necessarily make things easier. When you get used to a spend that's significant, it's hard to unwind that. And one of the biggest levers we have as late starters is to downsize our lives. And that's what we did. We, downsized our house, downsized our cars. We changed all the big rocks, and we went from single digit savers to 40% savings rate pretty much within a year. And we've been plugging away ever since with our bigger shovel that we have later in life. So that's about where we are. And I know that it's a similar story for a lot of your audience.
I love what you said about the silent majority, because, we're presenting this course for Rebel Finance School, and people look at us that, yes, we retired in our 40s, and they're like, well, that doesn't apply to me because I'm already in my 50s, 60s and beyond. And you're absolutely right. What we did is extremely unusual. Most people only start thinking about their money when they start to think about later life and, when is it that I'm able to retire and spend time with doing what I want to do? You're absolutely right, Bill, that's so many people, and that is absolutely normal. We're the weird ones.
We're the weird ones.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks for agreeing, Jackie.
Well,
we are the weird ones.
we only see your model. And it's isolating to see that, oh yeah, I mean, my friends in the fire movement are now retired in their 40s and 50s, and that's not me. And that can leave you with things like shame. Why didn't I get this right? Well, it's okay. You've got to process that and get that behind you. The past will weigh you down, and you've got to deal with your present and plan for your future.
So the question is how?
Yes.
How do we process the guilt, the shame, the feelings of like, I screwed this up, I didn't get these things right? How do we process that to be able to move on and actually make progress towards our goals?
Yeah, for me, I mean, at the time of my divorce, I definitely had the shame. I did this wrong. You know, how on earth could, my husband have $120,000 in his account and I only have 20? And just thinking deeply about, I feel like acknowledgement goes a long way. So I acknowledge that, we weren't talking about our money. I acknowledge that it's not his fault. I think in an interview, somebody asked me, do you think he was trying to hide the money? No, he wasn't trying to hide the money. We just didn't talk. It would have been easy for me to say that he tried to do that, but that's not true. So I had to come to the conclusion that I had made the mistakes and I had done a lot of things wrong. Most of it was my fault. There were some external things that existed. I wasn't exposed to that when I was young. My role models around about money were not that great. They didn't teach it in school. All of those are true too. But I didn't want to use that as a crutch. But it was important for me to acknowledge, to process, and to just admit, at the end of the day, okay, I guess that means I'm human. I've made mistakes like everybody else. So that's why I said it took me almost 2 years to process that. So we have to process it in our own time. And boy, I didn't realize how important it was to give myself that time to, acknowledge and to admit some things and to say, finally get to the point where I felt like, okay, I'm ready to do something. And so there was like a weight lifted off my shoulder just by starting. So whoever said they're 60s or they're in their 70s, honestly, I get so much gratification. Or I remember when I first started, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulder because in my head, I knew, now that I'm learning this and I'm moving forward to this point, I'm no longer feeling like I'm going to be in poverty. If I still have my mind, I think I'm going to be okay. And, actually doing a net worth statement and starting to do things made me feel better, one thing at a time. I didn't do it all overnight. I didn't even do it in the right order. I started investing. I should have been budgeting first. I should have been, looking at my cash flow and all of that. I did it all. I even did that stuff wrong, but no matter what, I still felt good that I was doing something. And with the fire community, there's a lot of stuff out there. And so I just remember there was some point where I was ping-ponging between doing different things. I'm listening to different people like, oh, should I invest in a traditional retirement account or should I do a Roth or a taxable account? I'm going back. I'm like, no, this, no, that. I'm going back and forth. But you know what? It still felt good because I was doing something. I was understanding what was going on. I was making progress. And finally, that sort of levels out. Like you were doing, I loved your charts you were doing yesterday, Alan. But, you'd be doing the squigglies and all that. I was squiggling all over. And then the squiggling started leveling out as it was sinking in. I was growing every day. I guess just like, a plant, so in the beginning, yeah, it's a little seedling and I don't know when it's going to mature, but wow, each day you're looking at it, it's growing a little bit. And that's progress, just growing in the right direction. And as I get older, I don't know about you, Bill, or you guys, but I just think a lot about legacy building. I don't know when that switch turned on in my head, but not only just my kid, I'm talking about my nieces, my nephews, the people in my community, the people in my neighborhood, and society as a whole. It is the work that I'm doing. Yes, it's going to benefit me, but I'm thinking more deeply about how much of the rest of the world will what I do benefit, society as a whole. So those are the things that I think about before, even if you are starting late and you feel like you don't have enough time in your lifetime, or that it's just never too late to have an impact. And I remember I told you about the investment club. Well, I remember the first meeting that I went to just to observe one of the main ladies there. She was a Black woman like me, so that meant something to me. But she was elderly. I didn't know how old she was. She just passed away this year, and she was 93. And she was and she taught me so. I'm like, I am so grateful. I'm so grateful that she was around to be my mentor, to show me so many things. Now, at the time, she would have been in her mid to late 80s, but she was still pretty active, at 90, 91. And I knew she was older, but I'm just shocked that she was as sharp physically and mentally as she was at that age. And I got to benefit from her saying that this is still important.
I love that.
That's
There's
fantastic.
so many points I want to pick up on of what you said, Jackie. I think key thing that you mentioned was about taking things step by step. And there were probably some words that you mentioned that people listening might not know what they mean. So like net worth statement and investing, and what does that even mean? And that's what we are doing here at Rebel Finance School. If you're coming along to the course, is each week, step by step, we'll go through it with you. And actually coming up next week on Monday, we're doing all
Net
about
worth statements.
net worth. So we're going to probably mention things and words that you might not understand, people tuning into this. But that's part of the process of being exposed to these words, learning as we go. It's a kind of whole different language. But as you pick up different words along the way, you start to understand, it starts to slot into place. And as Jackie said, it's not an overnight process. It's a weeks, months thing as well to adjust your mindset around money as well.
So the first week was cash flow, just like Jackie says. She wished she'd started with that. Like, we'll get the cash flow sorted, then we'll do a net worth statement, then we'll work on our mindset, and then we come to investing later on. One of the things Jackie said I'd love to pick up on is she said about the legacy building. And a lot of people come to us and say, your course is great, but it's too late for me, but I'll save the next generation. And part of me wants to scream at them and say, it's not too late for you. Like, don't use this as an excuse to not work on your finances. And the other part of me wants to hug them and celebrate them because they're helping the next generation. What's the message you share with those people who think it's too late?
Well, I think Jackie should talk here because she didn't tell the whole story. And one of the things we have to give folks is hope. Jackie, started at 39, she retired at 49. And I don't want to tell your whole story, but she never earned more than she was under six-figure income, and she managed to do this in 10 years. Jackie, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, we've talked to a lot of FIRE people. FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And it seems like one of the common time frames, not an age, but the time frame from the time you start waking up to the time you can actually start making movement to where maybe you get to financial independence, about 10 years. So it's not as long as people think, but society tells us, our jobs and our work policies tell us that, boy, you got to be here for 30 years, or you got to be here for 40 years to get your pension, or to, build up your retirement account. And it doesn't have to take that long. And one thing I noticed also, Bill, is like when I started waking up, I did feel like I was behind, of course, but I started running so fast, I ended up retiring early. That was not in the plan. I just didn't want to be in poverty. So that's what I was running from. But about 10 years, like Bill said, is what it took me from the time I woke up, 38, 39, to I actually hit my FI number, which the FI number is 25 times your expenses. So again, the FIRE movement kind of made it easy. So I'm like, okay, I can do math. 25 times. I was spending about $40,000. And so my FIRE number, Jackie, was $1 million. I hit that number at 47, but mentally I still wasn't ready. And I don't know, maybe I do things in twos, but it was 2 years later that I finally retired because I was not ready. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just was still very uncomfortable. And finally, I started designing that life, and I was ready to, make the leap, but it took mindset to be able to do that because I was, like you said, we're weird. So I'm breaking away from the norm. As I'm telling people that I'm retiring, half of the people didn't even believe it. They're like, no, you're just going to work somewhere else and you don't want to tell everybody. And so, so everybody was coming up with their theories, conspiracy theories of what I was really doing, but there was no big secret. The secret was there was no big secret. And like Bill said, I was making very modest income. I looked at, in the US, we have Social Security where it will show what you made each year, what your salary was. So I pulled that statement and I just looked at the last 10 years before I retired and I took the average. And the average for me was 80,000 US dollars. And I never made over six figures. In the US, what's considered a really good salary. A lot of people think you've made it if you can say you make six figures. That wasn't necessarily my goal. I was a single mom, I had a daughter and I was wanting to spend time with her, and that was my priority, not climbing the corporate ladder or getting to six figures. So, I made a decent income, but it wasn't $100,000 a year. Everybody thinks, you got to be really, wealthy or having a really high income. And when I realized that I was only living off about 40,000 because I was, putting money in my retirement accounts, I was putting money in the US, a health savings account, 40,000 was what I was living off of. So I easily did the math and, 47, I hit that 25 times my expenses and waited a couple more years. And then I retired and that was a really big deal for me. And poverty has kind of seeped away. As long as I still have my mind, I think I'm going to be okay.
Congratulations, Jackie. It's incredible.
What's important to note too is people want a magic button. They think, okay, I'm going to go high risk and I'm going to get there. I need to speed up. Well, unfortunately, there is no magic button. The path to fire is similar for the young as it is for the late starters. And you have to dig in. So it's generally going to be, well, you got to read the shockingly simple math of early retirement because it says early retirement, but it's really retirement in general. And, if you calculate your savings rate, as you talked about yesterday with minding the gap, and making the gap as big as possible. And late starters need to do that. That's our biggest lever. But it's going to be like Jackie had, 10 years. It's going to be 10, 12 years, generally, if you have a savings rate of 30 or 40%. And if you read that article, you can't unread it. It tells you, I can do this, but it's going to take a little time. And it's never too late. Even if you're starting at 60, well, you may have to work till traditional retirement age, but then you will retire.
And the fascinating thing is most people get to retirement age and they don't have enough to live. So just the fact you are retiring at a normal age, but comfortable is phenomenal. And I think people forget that because there's the crazy stat that the average person in the UK doesn't have 10 grand in savings. And that is not going to look after you in retirement.
Right.
So I think people always compare themselves to people above them and they go, well, I'm doing really badly. And they don't actually look at what is the normal stats and realize they're doing well. What are your thoughts on comparison and how useful or not it is for a human?
Well, I'll take that first because I was the Joneses. And I lived in neighborhoods with the Joneses, and you are the sum of who you surround yourself with, and your lifestyle will inflate when you act like the Joneses. And that's exactly what happened to us. We were paycheck to paycheck as physicians with high incomes. It's and I think you talked about that yesterday too. The lifestyle inflation, as you inflate, unless you keep your expenses about the same, you can't create the gap. And you naturally, will inflate to, this is what income's high, this is what I can spend. And that's what happened to us basically. And if you create that gap, you will get there in 10 years.
Yeah,
So-
and I was
Go
going
on.
to say, what if I compared myself to Bill? My measly little $80,000 and he's making doctor money. So I can't compare myself to him.
Yeah, no comparison. It doesn't help. And our general point that we like to make is run your own race. I don't know if you've aware of that analogy, but if we were all sprinting down the road together, if I look over at you and what you're doing in your race, I'll feel bad. I'll get in my own head.
You'll fall over probably.
I'll fall over, graze my knees. I'll come back like a schoolboy, and it'll all be very bad. But if I just run my own race and do a little bit better than I do, I will start to make progress. So we always say, run your own race.
Yeah, it's compare yourself to you and how you were doing. You know, have I improved from last year, last month? And just taking those steps and that progress as well. We mentioned yesterday, it is about progress. It's not about being perfect, either in the past, looking back and say, well, I wasn't perfect with my finances then. No, of course you weren't. You're human. No one is. It's about that progress over time. And that's why we talk about tracking as well and seeing that progress in the cold, hard data.
Yes. Quick comment for everyone in the chat. We are on the course going to be covering the how to work out your financial independence number, all of the maths behind it, and that will come in the later weeks. So we've got you. It's coming. We will work this out as we go. Before we get there, I did want to ask you both a question. Are there any advantages of starting later? Because we always talk about the advantages of compounding over time and like get your money invested soon. But like, is there any upside to starting later, or, you know, is it game over? I should just wait for death.
Well, there are absolutely upsides. And we actually did a breakout on this at Economy, a conference about this. And there are several, you know, when you are a late starter, you're in your higher income years. So you're going to have a bigger shovel. And that's going to make a difference for you. You've got to take advantage of that. Jackie, what are some of the others?
Yeah, some of the other ones are you could be through that bottleneck. You know, when you're right out of college, you might have student loan debt. You've got the kids, you've got the house, you've got the car, you've got a lot of things pulling at you, and your salary isn't that great. As you get older, that bottleneck starts to open up where maybe you're starting to make more at work. The kids are getting a little bit older, so you don't have that huge daycare bill. Maybe the house is now more reasonable. So there's so many things that start to loosen up as you get older. And, you know, if you are pushing forward to a lot older, let's say 50s and 60s, maybe the kids are off the payroll. You know, there's just, maybe you're at a point in your life where you actually are ready to downsize your house, or you can do some geo arbitrage and not worry about the teenagers whining about it. You know, so that starts to change a little bit too. And I felt that. I don't think I would have retired if my daughter was, you know, if I was still supporting her, but she was an adult. She was done with college. She was fine. So that honestly took away one of the excuses that I was using to not do it. But, and I think one of the other big things, Bill, that we hear all the time is that as you get older, and Katie and Alan, you guys may have mentioned this yesterday, but as you get older, you care less and less about what people think. Mm-hmm. You know, you're not trying to so much keep up with, you know, the peer pressure's gone. What's that? You know, this isn't third grade anymore. So you're doing more of what you want, and you don't give a crap about what somebody else thinks or is saying. And so that is pretty powerful. Because when we're young, we, you know, there's Dr. Bill over there. So, you know, Bill was like, well, you know, hey, I deserve this. I need to have this. And part of it was probably because, well, I'm a doctor and people see me as a doctor. I need to look like a doctor. So you just don't care as much about what people thinks anymore. And that can go a long way.
I love that. Yes. I definitely care less about what people think as I get older, and I hang out in my superhero t-shirts and, you know, whatever.
And you got your partner, you know, that's all you care about. And I'm still baffled at how you guys found each other. And I've been talking about it ever since. I'm like, how do I find the perfect person that matches my energy like that?
It wasn't always this way, Jackie.
Yeah, tune in for Rebel Dating School coming soon.
Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, look, I'm the first one to sign up.
So we did have a comment on YouTube that I wanted to highlight and ask you both about, which Kathy Lane said, the FIRE number was a total put-off for me. I calculated ours and got really despondent. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because we've had so many people, they just calculate that number and then they're like, well, I'll never give there, and they give up. And it's understandable. It can look so far away. What are your thoughts on that? How do you help people with that?
Yeah, my thoughts on that is if you talk to the traditional financial planning industry, they would come up with a lot bigger number. But a lot of times the number may look big, like you got to look at the components of the numbers. Like that helped me. Like before I ever came up with my 25 times my expenses, I had to do what? I had to know what my expenses were. And a lot of people that I talk to, if you ask them how much they live, what it costs them to live, what their expenses are, they'll say their salary. So if I did $80,000 a year times 25, that's $2 million. That is a little scary. But you really have to assess the expense, make sure your components are right, and that could make a difference. And then, and I like to start high level. It does make it easy, but you do have to drill down. And then you say things like, okay, well, in retirement, what other resources am I going to have? Like in the US, we have Social Security. So that lessens what we will need, every year. Or if you're getting a pension, that lessens what you will need every year. Oh, I think I plan on working. I actually like my job. That could lessen. So it could help, even though if you start out, it looks big, it looks crazier than you think it should, then take a look at the components of that, because you do have some flexibility. It sounds to me, when I first realized that I was only spending $40,000, I'm like, there's no way. And it sounds so low, but it was true because I did it the easy way possible. I just said, okay, let me take out the taxes that I'm paying, and let me take out the what I'm investing and saving, and whatever's left, that's what I'm living off of. So that's how I did it. So it was a true number. Like I didn't go line by line. We at some point, especially if you want to cut your budget or you want to make some adjustments, yeah, you need to do the line by line to see where the fat is. But when I saw that I was only spending $40,000, that made a big difference. So that literally cut my FIRE number in half, because I knew what my expenses actually were versus just going by my income.
And if you track your expenses, you may be surprised. And that's a powerful thing. You talked about filling the leaks in the boat. And if you do that and you reduce your expenses, it pays you twice. You have your 25 times is less, and your cost of living is less. So, you do that, and then you increase your income with side hustles. And then all of a sudden that gap becomes big. Plug the leaks in the boat, don't let the boat fill up. And then you will find that, just like Jackie did, I don't need as much as I thought.
I love that. And you're absolutely right. For those of the people who are listening in the UK, Social Security is the same as the state pension. So for us, you get the state pension at 65, 68, depending on when you retire. And it's about £10,000 a person. So you get £10,000 a year and you do the sums. You don't need to earn that through your investments and your other things. And it makes your figure a lot easier to get to. And if there's two of you, you get £10,000 each. So that does actually change your number. So anyone listening to this, we're going to go through this later in the course, but it's not as scary as you think, especially as it builds up over time, even if you're starting late.
The thing as well is that the human mind cannot fathom this thing called compounding, meaning that your investments grow and then you get growth on the growth. And it's this kind of snowball effect. And we'll talk a lot about this in week 4 when we explain compounding, what it means, how it works for you. But our brains can kind of only cope with the idea that something's linear, meaning it goes in a straight line, that, I put in 1 unit of effort and I get 1 unit of reward. It doesn't work like that. I'm so sorry to tell you. In any area of life, when you want to improve your health, when you want to improve your relationships, it doesn't work like that. It's never that linear thing. And our brains kind of think that it will be and get discouraged when you're putting all this effort in and you're not getting the visible rewards. But it's about doing those right behaviors, getting in the habits, and then over time you'll be surprised. And that is what Brian Tracy was talking about in that thing that Alan talked about right at the beginning when he got discouraged, that Brian said, when the money comes, you'll be surprised how much and how quickly it comes. That is the power of compounding. And that is, Einstein called it the 8th wonder of the world.
I just had to wait 10 to plus years longer for Brian Tracy's statement to come true. And the thing that I've actually realized is me especially, and everyone overestimates what they can do in a year, and then they underestimate what they'll achieve in a decade. So even if you're starting at 55 or 60, there is time to do something about this. And even if you will never reach your FIRE number, you will be better off financially just by taking action now. And it's kind of irrelevant if you reach the number or not. You will just be better from wherever you're starting. You will just be better.
Yeah, and I think that is so important. Like, are you better off having attempt to better your finances or not doing anything? Like, those would be the two choices. Should you not even attempt? Should you not even like try to go for it? And here's one example of the compounding and how, even though I was pretty rigid in the beginning, looking at my numbers, having the numbers laid out helped me. Like, we didn't have all these apps around when I was doing it, so I had a spreadsheet. And one of the things that was very helpful was that I had a 5-year projection spreadsheet. It was color coded and everything. I love color coded stuff. And each year I would put, this is how much I'm investing. I put each account in my retirement account, my Roth and all that. And I would make a projection by at the beginning of the year. Okay, I think, my investments I'm gonna put in this much. My existing investments are gonna grow by this much. And year by year for the last 5 years going into early retirement, I was able to make all these projections. And it was powerful to me to see the numbers, because I don't know if I would have been able to imagine that I would be able to, amass $1 million. And I worked another 2 years. So that got me to 1.3. It just made no sense to me until I started like somehow organizing my finances. And I think that's one of those early steps, is to know. You guys are going to talk about knowing certain numbers that are going to be important. And so I tried to be precise, and we know with the stock market and all that, I learned precision is not required. So when I retired, I had 1.3 million in investable assets. I've been retired since December 2019, and now it's June 2024. I have made withdrawals from my accounts. Okay, I've taken some money out. Well, the account has still grown, and right now my investable assets is just under 2 million after being retired for almost 5 years and taking out money. So we've had some decent years. We've had one bad year in 2022 with the stock market. And then I was so conservative, I didn't even, pessimistic is a better word. I was very pessimistic about our Social Security system. I didn't even include Social Security in my numbers. So now that I was able to clear the cobwebs out of my head and really dug into Social Security for an early retiree, even if I take my benefit at 62, I'm at about $2,500 a month for the rest of my life, adjusted for inflation, and our government can print money. So that's another safety net. So these are things that have gotten me feeling much better even after I retired. And the big thing was that precision is not required.
I love that saying, precision is not
Precision
required.
is not required.
It's kind of this fear thing, isn't it? The more precise I am, then I can
Fearful.
plan for everything. And I did want to make another point about compounding as well, which I love. I love compounding, not my point. My point's quite good as well. But so there's compounding in terms of money and your investments and over time, but there's also compounding of your mindset and the changes you make in areas of your life that you're sort of, way more in control of, the way that you're thinking, the way that you're feeling about money. And that's what this Rebel Finance School course is all about as well, is helping you shift your mindset. You come and hang out with us every week for 10 weeks, and we're sort of trying to infect you with our way of thinking and positivity and our energy around this, to show you, yes, it is possible. And as you make those changes in your mindset and the way you think about money, the way you talk about money, that is as key as the actual numbers themselves, as the spreadsheets themselves. Right. So that is the thing that you can definitely start on straight away. And week 3 is going to be all about how you're thinking about money, what you believe about money and yourself. I love that week.
It's one of our favorite weeks. So I think it's like we have so much more to talk about. There's so many questions in the chat, which we will get to, but I want to do the book giveaway because we promised it right at the
I'm
start,
excited.
and it is super exciting. So there is the book. So Jackie is the author. It's just been released. Fire for Dummies, Financial Independence, Retire Early for Dummies. This is the book I wish I'd had when I started, because I have read so many of those books, and it actually spoke to me because I thought I was a bit of a dummy. So I would just read those guides, made it so simple for me, and I loved it. So she's written that book to break it all down for us, which I am very excited about. And the publishers have very kindly said we can give away some copies, which is absolutely incredible. So we are going to give away 2 live on the Zoom tonight. So if you're in the Zoom, we will be giving away 2 books live in the Zoom. We will be giving away 1 book on YouTube and 1 book on Facebook. So we've got those different places. It's the same thing for all of them. If you would like a copy of the book, please write a message telling us why. So in the Zoom, write, I would like a copy of the book because. If you're on YouTube, please don't do it in the live chat because we won't be able to find it after the live has ended. Do it on the actual video and the comments section underneath. So in the actual comments underneath the video, please look, I would like a copy of the book because, and tell us why. And then you'll actually see in the Facebook group, I put a post with Jackie's wonderful picture with the book in the Facebook group. So write the same thing there. I would like a copy of the book because, and we're going to give away some copies of those books tonight. The YouTube one we will actually do in a week's time, and the same as the Facebook one. So write your comment now so that we've got it. But if you're watching on catch up, then you can still enter this as well.
Yeah, so we'll leave it for a week. So you'll have until the 18th of June at 8 p.m. UK time to enter this competition, and we'll check back on those YouTube comments and the Facebook comments as well.
Definitely.
So Zoom, if you are wanting a copy of the book, please write in, I would like the book because, and we will pick a couple of people to give the book to.
Exactly. Marlo Jean says, I work for the publishers, so should probably refrain from the book competition, which did make me smile. Probably.
Oh, yeah, we didn't have T's and C's, did we? Normally that's the thing. If you work for the company, blah, 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 blah. We don't have any T's and C's, do we?
No, we don't have any T's and C's. So please write that in there. It's a fantastic guide to help you get going with this stuff, and will complement what you find out on Rebel Finance School as well.
And remember, if you're watching YouTube live now in real time, please put it in the comments, not in the chat. Otherwise, we won't be able to find it.
Exactly.
I've read this book. It's awesome. And it says Fire for Dummies, but it actually is FI for Dummies. It's not about necessarily retiring early. And there's a couple sections on late starters in the book.
I love that, because actually, like, I think the whole fire thing is a bit of a misnomer. The retire early. It's not about retiring early. It's just about improving your finances and sorting your finances out. And it doesn't really matter what the age is at all. It doesn't matter what age you are. Katie is just looking at the comments. I think the comments are off until after the live stream. So
we made it tricky for people.
We made it tricky for people with how we've done it. We will send a link out to you all, but after the live stream's ended, put a comment and we will go back and find all of those. Cool. So whilst those comments are coming in and Jackie's going to be able to see them in the chat, Bill, if you meet someone who's like at that point that it's too late.
Well, they think it's too late.
But in their mind, that's real. How do you even start? What do you even do? What's your advice to someone? What are the step-by-step steps they should take to change the mindset, let go of the shame and guilt? Can you break it down for us?
Well, it's when I woke up at 50, All our money was with a private bank, and they were our advisors. I needed to exit the advisor and take control of my finances. So the first thing I did after I made a plan was bring my money to me. And, the investing part, it was relatively simple. I just started, in low-cost index funds, keep it to 2 or 3 funds, and just sock away money into those. And the magic of compounding will happen. You'll talk about these things. What do I invest in? And it's not as complicated as you think. The financial services industry makes it think it's incredibly complicated. They're selling. And I was buying. I made huge mistakes that led me to be late. Jackie started investing hard at 2008. In 2008, we were single-digit savers. We had renovated a house. The crash happened, and the house was upside down. We were house poor, which means you can't save as much because you have this big mortgage. You've bought debt instead of assets, as you talk about. And so we did, and we also sold at the bottom. That is the cardinal mistake that we made. We went to bonds instead of stocks at a time when you wanted to buy, because everything was on sale. And it's hard to stomach these downturns, but you've got to get your mindset together so that this is a normal part of the process. And I didn't have that. I didn't know that there was a normal part of the process. I got scared, and I let fear and my emotion carry me into one of the biggest mistakes of my career. If I'd have, taken advantage of compounding through the recovery, I'd be retired now. So it's really important to have your mindset straight before these, presumed catastrophes, when you think the world's ending, come, because that's the best time to have your mindset straight and buy.
And we'll talk about that a lot more in the later weeks when we come to talk about investing and how the stock market even works. What is the stock market? We're going to go into all of that.
Some of the comments that are coming in, which I absolutely love. Lorena says, I would like a copy of the book because it would make my gap bigger by not buying it. That's
well played, Lorena.
Fantastic.
Well played.
Libraries are great places too.
Yeah, someone said about the library.
Someone said about the library. Sister G says, is the book available on Amazon?
It is. UK Amazon, US Amazon, Canadian Amazon, and probably other countries. So it is available. And I know the US version has it at 20% off, but ebook, printed book, and soon to be audiobook. I'm not the person that is narrating it, but good news, I finally found the person that's writing it. Oh my gosh, it almost brought me to tears when I saw how similar we were.
I love that. And Fiona has said, I would like a copy of the book and I'm going to buy it. So you've got some extra customers as well, which is fantastic.
Jo says found it on the Amazon UK and it's 10% off.
And she's just bought it. So you've got an instant sale as well. She's just bought a copy, which is fantastic. So Jackie, have you had a chance to have a look through the comments? Did any catch your eye?
I did. So you said we're doing 2 on Zoom? Okay, so there was 2, and I'll tell you the reason. So Kate Kemp, and I'll read hers, but part of the reason why I chose Kate is because she had asked. I saw that she had asked a question earlier, and I didn't answer it. So if I could answer her question,
yeah, do it.
So Kate, thank you so much. And her question, I believe, was about savings rate. What was my savings rate during with how much was I investing and what was my investment rate? And I believe that's a number you guys will cover as well. So savings rate is simply of your income, what % of that are you saving and investing? And that's another piece of the math I had to do. I'm like, I don't know. I was only thinking about my 401k, but then again, I was putting money in my Roth. In the US, we have something called a health savings account because our healthcare system is crazy. And they allow us to, if you're on the right type of insurance plan, not all of them, but if you're on the right one, you can actually save in this health savings account. It's relatively new, maybe right at 20 years old. That's considered kind of new. So I started, I was contributing to that as well. Roughly that was about $6,000 or $7,000 for a family plan. I was putting a little money in my investment club. I was putting a little money in my brokerage account. So I literally, again, another little spreadsheet. I guess I just like the idea that, you know, they can do the calculations for me, but I had to add all of those pieces together to figure out how much am I saving and investing annually. And it came to be, my savings rate ended up being about 40%. So in the fire community, I feel like we hear 50% a lot. We hear 70%. Now that scared me. I'm like, there's no way I can save that much. And I just said it out of the blue. I didn't even like look at my numbers. But for me, it was only about 40% of my income. And one nice little bonus that I had, I call it a superpower. We all have superpowers. We all have adversities. But one of my superpowers was my company gave a very generous match. If I put in 7% in my employee sponsored retirement account, they put in 9%. And this is a private company, so they could do.
Wow.
And here's the funny part. Now, it wasn't a US company, it was a UK company. It's called Reed Elsevier. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but and I wondered if maybe it was so generous was because it was in the UK. I don't know, but that was our headquarters. That helped a lot. So that, you know, bumped up my savings rate. So Kate, that was kind of where my savings rate was. I was in sales, so my actual salary or my total compensation would fluctuate a little bit. So it wasn't always the same every year. So now the other one I saw was Heather. Let me see if I can go back and find Heather's. Let's see.
Just whilst Jackie finds that, for anyone listening to this about savings rate, we will cover it on the course, and it doesn't matter where you're starting at. If you're starting at with zero savings rate, i.e. you have no gap between your income and your expenditure, that's where we build from. So it doesn't matter where you're starting from. We just slowly take action on increasing your income, reducing your expenses, building that gap and investing. And we will do this together. And then an update from Fiona Dexter. Her copy of Fire from Dummies is arriving tomorrow. So I love this live
Hope
updates.
she'll, you know, continue to update us as it arrives, as she reads the first chapter and so on. I'm really
Yes,
looking forward to that.
and Olu on YouTube used to work for the same company as you, Jackie. So yeah, there's a few British people
yay.
here who work for the same company.
So I'd
Cool.
love to visit the UK. And when I visit, I still left on friendly terms with my company. I was there for 20 years. So it wasn't like I just said, 2 years and stick it. It was a great company, great people, great boss or whatever. But I knew that there were some bigger things. So Heather M., and she posted this at 3:49, and she says, I would like a copy of the book because I did the course 2 years ago and made some changes which made a difference. I'm doing it again this year to do more, and I am ready to learn and implement everything I can to retire in 10 years. So inspired by Jackie and Bill. Thank
That's
you,
awesome.
Heather M. That was an amazing comment. And I think it definitely shows that she's committed to doing this. She's done it multiple years with your program. It is amazing. And I cannot believe that it's free. So again, anyone in the world can attend this free school. Absolutely free. But that's why we're the anomalies, because not everyone will. So if you get value from it, especially to the point to where you are coming back, you're taking it in, you're implementing it, and you want to do it again so you can build on it, that's powerful.
It really is. It really is. Jackie, thank you for choosing 2 people there. So Kate and Heather, please send us, have you messaged them individually, Katie? Are you already on that?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Please send us
Actually,
an
I
email, hello@rebeldonegans.com, and send us your address and we'll get that all sorted for you. For everyone else who didn't win a copy tonight, you still have an opportunity to fill out your messages. So you could just take your message from Zoom and put it in the Facebook message. You can put it on the YouTube comments after this has gone live. So there are still 2 opportunities to win the book from Jackie, which is phenomenal. We are so grateful to the publishers Wiley for doing this for us.
Just a quick question for you, Jackie, from the YouTube as well. Patty says, is the book relevant for Canadians?
Yes. The only
Even
parts-
Canadians.
Yeah, even yes, even Canadian, and really any country. So here are the small differences that you will find. We obviously have a certain retirement system here, and we may refer to the US version of it. So whatever most of what we have in the US, there is a version in other countries. So, but when we're talking about the big picture things like the psychology, the emotion, getting back on track, trying to come up with your retirement number, all those things are universal. Community, that's universal. So I would say 90% of the book translate in any country and in any system. And the little bit that doesn't, you can probably figure out what the equivalent is for your country. But I can tell you, when I was writing this book for Wiley, they specifically said, can you also include some things in there for UK people and Canadian people? So for instance, I put together a chart that showed the full retirement age for the UK, the US, Mexico, and Canada. All of them are about the same. Actually, US has a much older retirement age. Our full retirement age is 67. The UK, I think, was like 65. I think Mexico, Canada might have been around 65. So there was some little nuances, but not enough to where you wouldn't still get value on the really, really critical points that you'll also learn about, going through the school this summer with Alan and Katie.
And actually, what's really exciting, building on what Jackie said, is this is the first year that the Rebel Finance School is not just teaching British stuff. So Jackie mentions Roths and 401ks and lots of different American terms. We, the Donegans, will be teaching the equivalent, which is ISAs and SIPs and all the British thing. We have Ruth, the happy saver, who is coming on to talk to us about the New Zealand model, which we're very excited about. We have Jackie and Bill's book about those bits. Plus we have Brad from Choose FI to come on and talk about the American model as well. So this is the first year ever that we have different sessions for different areas of the globe, which I am super excited about. And you're exactly right, Jackie. Wherever we've gone to teach this, 90% of it's the same. And then the name of the fund and how the tax system works is different, but the rest is pretty much the same. So we can figure that out as we go. We can definitely figure out as we go. Katie, did you have something to add?
No.
Okay, perfect. So it's time to wrap this up. Bill, Jackie, what are your closing messages for our audience? What would you want them to take away? What would you want them to get tattooed on their left shoulder so that they remember it for the rest of their life? I don't know why I picked the left shoulder, but it felt right.
Practical.
Yeah.
Well, give yourself some grace, forgive yourself, find out where you're starting, get some help. It's okay to get a financial advisor as long as you get the right one. And maybe you'll talk about that in your series as well. Make a plan, which, create a personal finance statement and an investor policy statement where you lay out not only what you're going to invest in, but what are you going to do with insurance? What are you going to do with housing? What are you going to do with your debt? There are many areas in personal finance that aren't focused on investing that you need to include in your plan. So that's the most important part. And taking action, that's the 20%. The 80% is getting ready.
I love that, Bill. And Jackie, before your closing message, in the chat, Samantha said, why do you have money framed behind you?
Oh, what a good,
good question.
that is a good question. That was Samantha. I was about to say, do we not have an extra book for her or something? This was not done on purpose, but earlier when I was saying that it seems like I work in twos, but I do. After I got divorced, it took me 2 years to get my mind right. When I was working and hit my FI number, I waited 2 years before I decided to retire. And I'm a big fan of $2 bills. That's how I first learned how to say, I don't know if I've ever told you guys this story, but I grew up in poverty and all of that. Well, I was still saving $2 bills because when I got my paper check one time at my first job, I got back a $2 bill at the bank. And I kept it because I thought it was special. So all through high school, I still kept getting more $2 bills. Through college, through my career, becoming an adult and all of that, I'm still saving these $2 bills, thinking that they're special. And finally, my daughter, she was a teenager. She's like, well, Mom, how many $2 bills do you have? And I said, well, I don't know. And I said, let's count them. That's a math lesson right there, right? So we counted the $2 bills, and I had 1,900 $2 bills, or $3,800, times two, $3,800. So I'm like, I can't just blow them at the grocery store or go get candy or liquor or whatever your vice is. And I can't just turn them in at the bank. So as I do financial literacy sessions, workshops, and things like that, I give away $2 bills. And since then, they've been very special to me because it helped me realize, again, hindsight is 2020. It helped me realize that when I thought I was too poor to save anything, I saved those $2 bills. In high school, in college, broke college kid, I still saved those $2 bills. That was my first lesson in saving, but I didn't realize it for decades. So that is an uncut sheet of $2 32 $2 bills that I ordered from the Department of Treasury. So it's legal. They're actually unique serial numbers on every single one of them. And it cost me $102. I'm like, what a ripoff. But
there's something wrong in that math there.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is an uncut sheet of $2 bills, my lucky charm.
I love that. And then just your closing comment for the Rebel Finance School audience. What do you want us to take away, Jackie?
Yeah, well, I definitely want to agree and say ditto to everything that Bill said. We've talked a lot among ourselves about, getting a late start, and a lot of our guests. And we've learned a lot from every guest that we've had on our show. For me, my biggest one, especially being post-retired, is that precision is not required. If I had to put it on a t-shirt, that's what it'd be. Precision is not required. And give yourself grace. I feel like the biggest part of this whole financial journey is mental and emotional and how you feel. And I guess I'll leave with my favorite quote from my favorite poet, Maya Angelou, if anyone likes her work. But she's this brilliant poet, actress, activist, and all of that. And she says, people will forget what you said, they forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel.
Well, and that's important because in our community, it's hard to start because, when you're ready for the lesson, and we have a community that is very emotionally supportive. Our podcast is out there for people to consume when they're ready. We're not pushing this information out on them. Our Facebook community of 13,000 is out there to answer questions. So I would encourage all late starters in this group to consider working with us as well, because you'll find your tribe.
I love that. And you can find Catching Up to FI. Just Google Catching Up to FI or search for it on Facebook. Bill, Jackie, and Diana and the Catching Up to FI gang. You will find them so easily. They are amazing. And you know what their faces look like now. So you can find them online.
We put links in the chats.
They are fabulous. And there's links in the chats.
Bill, you're supposed to do the Vanna White. You're supposed to.
Oh.
He's got the handsome face too. But yeah, now you know what we look like. We love the late starters because we're both a late starter. You end up in a different place, and no matter what, you're making a little bit of movement every day.
I love that. Bill, Jackie, thank you for coming. Please, everyone, give them a virtual round of applause. Thank you so much for what you've done. We really appreciate you being here. And for everyone on the Rebel Finance School, we will be here live on Thursday night for the Q&A. So if you have any questions for us, fill out the question form, come and find us on Thursday night, and we will answer as many of your questions as we can. Let's make progress together. Doesn't matter where you're starting. Let's do this. Thank you for hanging out with us. Have a wonderful evening. Katie?
Good night.
And that's it.
It's been a blast. It's been a blast.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you guys for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm ending. Goodbye, YouTube. Thank you so much for coming along. Goodbye, YouTube. Okay, we are